Hello and welcome to the Brand Hunch podcast, where we explore ideas and hunches around how marketers are growing great brands. It's a look under the hood at how much is marketing science and how much is built on a hunch. This episode is in partnership with Tracksuit, a beautiful, affordable and always-on brand tracking tool that helps marketers and agencies answer the age-old question, is my strategy working? It's not enough to talk about great creative or reach. Your CFO wants proof that the campaigns are driving growth within the segments who actually matter. Tracksuit makes it all possible without the six-figure price tag. In just 30 days, you'll have a live dashboard tracking your brand health over time, benchmarking against competitors, and surfacing boardroom-ready insights. We at Cello use Tracksuit. Many of our guests on the podcast have used Tracksuit. It's a really great tool. If you can't prove your brand campaigns have worked, you risk losing your budget. And if you can, you unlock growth. Check them out at gotracksuit.com. We have got a cracker of an episode for you today. It was recorded live this week at Content Summit Australia in Brisbane, which was an absolute hoot. I am so tired. However, I was lucky enough to sit down with Anri Mc Hugh, Head of Marketing, Awareness and Consideration at Specsavers ANZ. We did a proper deep dive into one of the most iconic brand platforms in advertising. If you don't know it, you should probably leave the industry. We're talking nearly 24 years of should have gone to Specsavers. Trust me, by the end of this conversation, you'll understand exactly why it's still going strong. All right, let's get stuck in. Hello, thank you for joining us for this chat. You were great this morning. Everyone's come up and given you many a compliment, which we're well deserving. If you haven't heard of the Brand Hunch podcast, it's on all the podcast channels. Find it where you get your podcasts. And it's in conversation with senior marketers. We're trying to explore this idea of how are great brands created and what can we learn at the intersection of marketing science and backing a hunch. I own a creative agency, championing the idea that sometimes a great idea is just this sort of like feeling or a hunch or a vibe. And most of us will agree that backing those often kind of brave, crazy ideas are what differentiates a good brand from a great brand. So that's the podcast. The episode that's live at the moment is the former CMO of the Formula One, Rugby Australia, World Rugby, and we explore all of this today. Luckily joined by Anri Mc Hugh from Specsavers. This will be a live podcast episode. I'm going to try and differentiate it from this morning's presentation. We're going to dig a little bit deeper and get a little more personal. Also, Anri's accent is just so lovely to listen to. I think we could stay up here all day.
Oh, I'm glad that you can all understand me, because sometimes I'm like, do people know what I'm saying? So thank you.
I'm just drooling. I love the accent.
Wow.
So a couple of setup questions about Specsavers and the brand platform, just for anyone listening to the podcast that wasn't there this morning. And then I'm going to try and get a little bit different and take a different sort of approach from this morning. So we'll kick it off. Specsavers is so well known in Australia, in the UK. What is it that you're actually selling? What is Specsavers as a business?
First of all, I'm going to begin by saying thank you so much for having me here today. And yes, I thought all of you would be sick of me by now, having come along to my session this morning. But I know there is a podcast audience listening at home. They didn't get to see me live on stage. So what is Specsavers? What are we selling? Well, Specsavers is a brand that was founded over 40 years ago by Doug and Mary Perkins. It was founded in 1984, and both Doug and Mary still are part of the business to this day. They're now both in their 80s, and they are super inspiring. I got to meet Dame Mary once, and can I just say, I was beyond excited, and I fangirled hard. But yes, so Specsavers founded in 1984, but I thought it would be good to just take you back in time. So in 1984, in the UK, glasses were actually pretty pricey. So your average person, couldn't afford them, and they had to actually deal with government-issued glasses. And at that time, there was only about 6 styles. So you could imagine you were probably walking down the high street, bumping into your neighbor, and they were probably wearing exactly the same glasses as you were. But that's not the only reason why Doug and Mary decided to do what they do. So Doug and Mary, from the very get-go, always believed that everyone should have access to quality, affordable eye care, no matter who you are or what your circumstances. They added audiology into the mix about 22 years ago. In the UK, and about 8 years ago in the ANZ market. And actually, Doug and Mary's pioneering spirit of access to care still exists to this day. Like Doug is working on a new program around ophthalmology. So how can Specsavers make ophthalmology more affordable for people? So that just shows you they're still as passionate today as they were when they set that business up 40 years ago.
I wasn't going to ask you this, but I'm interested. How has the product changed over the years? Is it still comparable glasses to 1984, but a little smaller, in the size, or have you revolutionized eyewear?
Well, there's no longer 6 styles anymore. We've got 1,300 frames in any Specsavers store that you go into. It's really interesting. The optical category is really slow moving. Yes, we conform to trends, but actually, if you look across the category, it's a lot of the same styles across a lot of our competitors. But to answer your question, are we seeing a return to those small glasses, or as Jonathan Bailey maybe was coined, slutty little glasses when he was doing his press tour? They have definitely made a bit of a comeback. So yes.
What is your hottest selling product? What sells the most?
In Australia, we really love local brands. So at Specsavers, we've got some great collaborations with Australian designers. So the likes of Alex Perry, Colette Dinnigan, Carla Zimpati. We recently added Christopher Espa into the mix, Country Road and Mimco. So our top selling brands are actually Australian brands. So Alex is number 2 and Mimco is number 3. So It's pretty amazing.
So on that note of collaborations or partnerships, how do you choose who to partner with? And is there any brand reputation risk when you're going into partnership with these brands? If something terrible happens with one, it affects you. And how do you think about mitigating that?
So to answer your first question, how do we think about who we partner with? We work really closely with the product team. So there has to be a gap within our range. So, is there a particular customer segment that we're trying to go after? So a great example is our recent collaboration with Christopher Espa. We noticed that there was an opportunity with that probably 25 to 35-year-old demographic, maybe even a bit younger, probably 20, that we were underrepresented, and we didn't actually have a brand that serviced that part of the market. So in terms of the process, we work really collaboratively with the product team. We do lots of market research. We look at a number of brands, then we narrow it down. We will present those brands to the board, and then we tend to do some outreach to the brands. We are really big on chemistry at Specsavers. As you can guess, we're a family-run business. So actually connections with people is really big for us. So
it's great to hear that at scale and such a large organization that still matters.
Correct.
Is it embodied in a company value, or how do you live that?
Well, I think it's just because of the fact that it's a family-run business. It's kind of that family feel runs through everything that we do. So what happens is we'll set up collaboration sessions, meet and greets, chemistry sessions, and then we get a feel for, well, how could that brand work with us? How could we work with that brand? And then it's super collaborative from, the very beginning right through to the frames launch in store. It can take about 24 months to get a pair. So it's not fast at all. It takes about 24 months for a pair of glasses to get into a store. And the designer is involved in every step of the way. So it's super collaborative.
And when you think about the traditional 4 Ps of marketing, are you and your team or whomever's involved from marketing involved in pricing and product, or are you inheriting other people's work?
We help the product team. So things like those collaborations, pricing, that tends to be set by the product team. That's their specialty. Our job is to bring it to market. So yes, we're not involved in price, but we can help inform product. And we also help inform what products we think are going to help us achieve our goals. So at the moment, one of our key goals is to really reach that new customer. they're within that 30 to 44 demographic. You're probably like, why 30 to 44? Well, unfortunately, as we get older, our eyes age. So every single one in this audience, everyone listening on the podcast, you will need us one day. So we are, looking out for brands that we should be promoting to that new customer demographic.
You might not know the answer to this, but something I've been interested in. Is opening our phone first thing in the morning when you wake up damaging our eyesight long term? And Are you seeing that in the numbers?
Yes. We have, that is 100%. We are going to have a myopia epidemic. We are already seeing lots of people coming to us because of the adverse effects of screen time. So yes, digital eye strain is a really big thing. Part of my role in the consideration space is telling people things about the brand that they don't already know. So they already know us for value. So one of those key tasks that me and my team are tasked with is demonstrating that we are the experts who can look after your eye health. And that's often leaning into signs and symptoms. So getting people to realize that actually they may need glasses, whether that's parents. So talking to them about the signs and symptoms that their child may need glasses, but also talking to them because they're probably in that 30 to 44-year-old demographic. They have grown up with screens pretty much, and they are seeing those adverse effects that it's having on their eye health, which again is good for us.
Good for your brand purpose around.
Good for our brand, exactly, about access, to quality, affordable eye care, and so yes, that's correct.
The Should Have Gone to Specsavers is your brand platform you've had for a long time. It's served you really well,
yes,
extraordinarily well as a brand. How did it originate? Was it out of the UK? Where did it come about? What was the brief at the time? What do you know about that process back then?
Yes, so Should Have Gone to Specsavers is just over 23 years old. I think it's even
amazing. Older than you.
Yes, older than me. It's actually going to be 24 years old, I think, this year. What do I know about the history of Should Have Gone to Specsavers? At that time, they were looking for a platform that could use humor to supercharge our purpose. So the team tried a few different things, different ways in, and then they discovered that Should Have Gone to Specsavers was working. And then they just kept creating new work. Magic. That's basically the magic happened. But I think, what's great about Should Have Gone to Specsavers is it really is born from a simple truth. It's, sight and hearing mistakes. What can happen when you can't see or you can't hear? So it's a really rich territory.
The average tenure of a CMO, as we all know, I think is 3 or 3.5 years. Why do you think Specsavers is one of the only outliers that's retained a strong brand platform throughout different marketing teams, marketing initiatives, probably board members, I would assume? How do you think it's stood the test of time? What have you done differently to other brands that have seen different eras come and go?
I think back to my other point, it's a really simple construct. Everyone almost has a Should Have Gone to Specsavers. We get pitched Should Have Gone to Specsavers ideas all the time. We all have those moments. I think it's also, transcended advertising now. It has become part of the everyday vernacular. And I think, most CEOs, or most CMOs, and the board, they also want to put their stamp on the legacy that Should Have Gone to Specsavers. We've recently, we've had a new trading director at Specsavers who was the retail director. And we're having lots of fun with him because he has hundreds of ideas. It's just, can we bring them all to life? Watch this space. So yeah.
One of the things that you're excellent as a brand is treading the line between you're a healthcare business, but you're humorous, lighthearted, without being crass or rude. How do you tread that line? Is it a bit of a gut feel as to this is the type of humour we are as a family business versus this is too far? Is there a criteria? How do you assess what is funny?
Yes. So should-haves are never crude. We punch up, we don't punch down. We use humor to demonstrate our purpose. And what we do is really important. We're helping people sense their words through sight and hearing. And we're a family-friendly brand, So when we're thinking about we're thinking about, how can we entertain people? How can we take the fear away from a category that they might, otherwise avoid? How can we humanize it? And how can we draw them towards us?
You're a brand for anyone with eyes. So you're
Yes.
essentially a brand for everyone, a mass brand.
Yes.
Do you think that is easier or hard from a marketing perspective than being a niche brand?
That's a really good question. I think it's pretty easy for us because everyone will eventually become a customer. So across the funnel, we are in market all the time. So we're pretty much talking to nearly every single person. Of course, depending on the job we're doing. So, whether it's an awareness job, you're really talking to the entire market because you're trying to create those long-term memory structures. So, when they come into the category, they're like, oh my God, there's that brand that really made me laugh. When it comes to consideration, you're really talking to that kind of 30 to 44-year-old demographic. So that's that new customer. They may have had, one or two instances in the category. They may be coming into the category for the first time. So they're considering us. And then when it moves down to activation, you're really talking about that customer who is in the category. And it tends to be, that 30 to 50, almost up to 60. So yes, we're talking to nearly every single person that needs eye care or hearing care right across the funnel and using all of the channels that are at our disposal.
Which keeps you out of trouble, which is good.
Yes, pretty much.
You've been with the brand or the organisation for 9 years.
Yes.
What is it that's kept you? And over those 9 years, what has been your single most favourite piece of creative?
So I've been with Specsavers 9 years, almost 9 years now. I'm coming up to my 9-year anniversary. What has kept me at Specsavers? It's definitely the culture. That family feel, that, the feeling that we're all working together for the same purpose. It's a really nice feeling to get up to and contribute to every single morning. It also helps that, we were voted as one of the 12 best places to work in the world. We're number 4 in Australia, number 2 in New Zealand. And people genuinely go out of their way to help each other. Sometimes that's to your detriment also because you're like, do I actually need your help on this? But actually, we all just want to get involved. We all just want to row in. I think one of the other things that's really kept me at Specsavers, for almost 9 years, it's also the career opportunities. So I began in Specsavers in the PR team. I was a PR manager. Then there was a maternity leave cover in the brand planning team, so moved into the media side of things. Like, I'm not afraid to admit that I really didn't know anything about media buying, but my boss at the time, a guy called Sean Briggs, who's still my current boss, said, well, you know the brand, you can tell stories, you've got a media agency that will help you, so you'll be fine. Just ask lots of questions, be curious, and I'm really curious by nature. And then last March, we had a bit of an organizational change. So what we decided to do was organize the marketing teams in each country by the funnel. So we have got an awareness and consideration customer journey team. We also have an activation and trade team. And we also have like a digital CRM customer journey team. And then we've got hubs of excellence that are global that support each of those customer journey teams. So we've got a brand hub, we've got a creative hub, an insights hub, a digital hub. So I think one of the things that has been really great for me has been career progression and the business investing in my career. And I've also had some really great mentors along the line, from Sean Briggs to my previous head of PR, a lady called Kathy Remy Matos, to our old trading director, who's now the GM of Canada, a lady called Jane Hoban, who've just really championed us and really invested in us from a career perspective.
Incredible, and great to hear that, although it's a large organisation in this scale, there's still many pathways within that you can sort of find yourself. Single favourite piece of creative?
Oh, a single favourite piece of creative. I referenced it in my presentation, but for those listening at home, we recently worked with Home and Away. That was pretty cool for me. I'm from a small town in rural Ireland of 800 people. Home and Away, neighbours round the twist, they were my gateway to Australia and Australian life. So getting to, bring the brand that I love and breathe every single day and link it back to something from my childhood was absolutely magical. So I'm going to say working with Home and Away, working with them to develop 6 mini episodes, that brought the characters and the locations of Summer Bay to life was really magical.
Home and Away, obviously traditional media, TV. Why are you choosing TV over every other channel?
I think for us, TV still has that mass reach. It's really hard to beat. It probably is still one of the fastest ways to reach a very large and diverse audiences at scale, especially during live events. So, we've had partnerships with the likes of the Arias, where we've also, we have content around sport. So those kind of, live tentpole moments, where kind of it's happening right now, you've got everyone tuning in, that's why probably we look at those channels. But then I think, a lot of people will say to us, well, isn't social where it's happening? Well, I think there's an opportunity to, have those TV moments, but then also you've got social in the mix also, because that's often where all the commentary, all the chatter is happening on the side. So I think for us, it's a bit of both.
You mentioned before you're a mass brand, you're going after mass media to reach mass people. If you're a brand for everyone, how do you think about segmentation?
That's that's an interesting question, because we're literally talking to everyone. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we do segment our audience, depending whether it's activation, awareness, or consideration. But because we're speaking to all Australians at all times, we don't really have a really sophisticated segmentation model. It's probably a bit more segmented when we get down to the CRM side of things.
Sure. And is this model, which I've never seen in another organisation's marketing team being structured by funnel, is that a global structure?
Yes.
It is. And what are some of the pros and cons to it? I assume there's a lot more pros because you're sticking with it. And I assume also that being a mass brand and a large organisation allows you to have, frankly, enough to do as each part of the funnel. But notwithstanding, are there any downsides?
I think there's more upsides than downsides. So as I mentioned, probably in March 2025, we made a really decisive organizational shift to kind of accelerate that momentum behind the brand by structuring by the funnel. And we really structured by the funnel because it's more about delivering outcomes. And it's outcomes that really deliver genuine, sustainable growth. So I think in terms of some of the benefits of it, it really is about collaboration. So we've got this amazing global community of connected marketeers that you can really rely on. It's also about efficiencies. I was talking to someone a bit earlier that, when it comes to annual planning and you've got all these different markets who are looking at different activities to either attract or retain customers, there's always similarities. So a great example is, I may be wanting to target parents of children. So I need a kids campaign. The UK may have a similar type of objective, and say Canada has a similar type of objective. In our old world, we would have literally made 3 separate campaigns, one for every single market, which doesn't feel very sustainable. It doesn't feel very efficient from a cost perspective. So instead, what we now can do is we can work with a global hub, and we will brief a global hub, like the global creative hub, to create that kids campaign on our behalf. So what we do is they consult to us, we all contribute to the brief, we are part of the process the whole way through, and then we deliver one piece of work that then we can localize. So yes, it's really efficient.
How do you think about consistency without sameness? Because I imagine if you just plastered the logo and should have in the same way across all channels, it would be I don't think it would be that effective personally. So how do you think about turning up every day, but in the context of the channel, thinking about the particular audience or the job to be done, but tying it all together into this, enduring brand platform?
A few years ago, you could probably buy TV and reach everyone. The media landscape is so fragmented. So for us, we really do need to plan per channel. So we work really closely with our media and a creative agency to think about, well, what is the best expression for that channel, but how do we make sure that our brand still shows up? So, a great example may be on social, we'll look at different edits. We won't just do a cut down of our TVC. We may look at things like behind the scenes content, but it still has that same humor, that same tone of voice that Specsavers is known for, so the consumer can connect all the dots.
I'm going to throw you a tricky one to answer, but let's see how this goes. I'm on the agency side of the table. We're pitching and working with brands on brand platforms all the time. Knowing what you know now, how much would you have paid for the should have brand platform? How it's been instrumental to the business. How much is that worth? And from a sort of brand platform perspective, pitching in brand platforms, from a client side, what would you say is the clearest way to show that a brand platform likely has future potential?
That's a really hard question.
I did say that.
I don't have a time machine to go back, but probably to answer your first question, what is it worth? Well, I think it's priceless because, it really should have gone to Specsavers really has brought our purpose to life. Humor has really supercharged everything that we do. It makes something that is scary, potentially, more accessible to everyone. I think what we've done really well at Specsavers is we've just applied it consistently. So we haven't got bored. So I think my advice to other marketeers would be, if you find something, it's going to take a while. I showed an example in my presentation that it can, from system 1, that it can take, at least 4 years to see the benefits of a fluent device. So my advice to people is don't get bored. Don't find something new every single week just because, sales are maybe wavering. I think you need to stick strong and you need to be able to demonstrate to your board the power of a brand platform and the job that it can do in the future. You can't just always be harvesting the tree. You have to grow the tree, you have to water the tree, and you have to plan for the future customer also.
One theme that comes up a lot on the podcast is this idea of conviction. And if the business is built around this strong conviction for brand, then the investment usually follows. Another provocative question for you. Our friends at Tracksuit, the brand tracking software, pulled some numbers. Specsavers basically dominates on most, if not all, metrics, apart from one. You're sitting at 23% on is a cool brand, below the competitor average of 29%, well behind Oscar Wiley at 43%. That's a significant gap for a brand that's winning on all other fronts. Why do you think it is, and is it something you're looking to address?
Probably number one, what metrics we're deciding if it's a cool brand or not, because cool's very subjective. Like, I think Specsavers is a very cool brand. Yes, you're going to say the numbers speak for themselves, but what are they based on? We have got huge market share. We are practically the leader in the category. You know, the Oscar Wileys and the Billy Nelsons have really small market share. Sure, they may appear cooler to a younger demographic, but we've actually seen a diversification of their strategy. They are going after older customers. They are going after multifocal wearers. So they've also realized that actually just catering to a certain segment probably is not sustainable. But I do think that, you know, a brand of our size, we shouldn't rest on our laurels. So yes, we always have them in the back of our mind. And that's why, you know, we do introduce new brands like your Christopher Espa, for example, to attract that younger, you know, future customer. So yes, we're never resting on our laurels because, as Mary says, we've got a culture of continuous improvement. So yeah.
What I'm interested in is leveraging the Specsavers brand name for audiology when there's sort of specs in the name. I would assume that you're using it to flex across your mass audience into another category. But in terms of doing what it says it does on the tin, you know, specs and Specsavers,
Yes.
obviously not audio. How do you think about that from a brand perspective? Does it bother you?
Yes, it's definitely something we have to think about. And it's probably thinking about, well, what is that halo effect that we can have on each categories? Because yes, Specsavers is in the name, but we offer much more than just glasses now. But, you know, the brand is so strong. We ended the year with our top of mind awareness sitting at over 50%, you know, which is pretty amazing. So for us, it really is about how can we leverage the strength of the master brand. And we do this in a number of different ways. I mentioned our Home and Away partnership. We're going to continue that this year. We're adding 3 new mini episodes into the Home and Away universe. And one of them is going to be audiology. But again, in that should have gone to Specsavers format.
You mentioned before that you're a PR guy first and foremost, or you were when you started your career.
Yes.
Do you think that has made you a better marketer today? And if so, how?
Yes, it's a really good question. It's something I'm really passionate about, especially within my remit. So one of my key roles is consideration. So it's really about telling people things about the brand that they don't know. And I really think that having that earned media, that PR background, that storytelling background really helps with that. Like, I'm not just telling them that we've got 50% off lenses, or, you know, we've got 2 pairs for $199. It's much more emotive, richer storytelling because I'm trying to change their perceptions. So yes, having a PR background has worked really well, I believe, for me and for my team.
Probably a strength, marrying it
Correct.
with the media numbers.
Correct.
And the.
Agree.
Yeah. I've got some questions here from the audience.
Yes.
I know that you work hand in hand with local area marketing teams. One of the
Yes.
questions here is, how do you ensure the brand consistency from sort of a head office down to the local level?
Local area marketing doesn't sit in my remit. That sits in the activation and trading team. But how do we ensure the brand consistency? Yes, we've got really strong brand guidelines. Our local area marketing team work really closely with us. So yes, there's some freedom, but all of our franchisees also sign up to a joint venture partnership agreement. And within that agreement, there are guidelines around what they can and can't do with our brand. But we're also open to ideas as long as it doesn't break the brand.
This is another question from the
Yeah.
audience. How large is the comms division within the Specsavers organisation compared to other divisions?
So we sit within the trading department. So the trading department is made up of planning. So there's an awareness and consideration customer journey team, the activation customer journey team. There is the CRM team. Product also sits within the trading department, as does a creative hub. So there's a small studio. There's about 75 people across trading. I am a team of 4. So we always say we're really small but mighty. We are 4 people bringing Specsavers brand to life from an awareness and consideration perspective. So it's not massive, not as big as most people think.
This show's all about having a hunch and backing it.
Yes.
Tell me about a hunch that you have had throughout your career and how did it go?
I think my biggest hunch that I had throughout my career was probably moving to Australia. If anyone's ever done it, it can be pretty daunting. You know, you are afraid, you're also excited, and you're also stepping outside your comfort zone. I think my hunch was, you know, I knew how to do my job. How then could I take that and transfer it to Australia? And obviously that hunch has paid off because here I am today as the head of marketing for Specsavers, which I never thought would happen, which is kind of wild. But yeah, that hunch paid off, obviously.
Incredible journey. My last question for you. How do you stay creative? What inputs do you consume so that you are turning up for your team and for the business in new ways?
I am really old school. I was probably analog before analog was a thing. I love reading. I love magazines. I love print.
Specifically, what do you read?
I read everything from the New York Times to Vogue to I picked up a copy of Country Style on my way here. I pick up everything. I also love radio. Like, I think talkback radio is a really untapped source of what's actually happening in the world and what's happening right now. We actually had a conversation about this as a team yesterday. A few months ago, a lot of the commercial radio stations were giving away holidays and cars. In the last few weeks, people are giving away petrol vouchers. People are, you know, paying people's bills. So that is just showing you, and it's another way for us as a marketing team to understand our customer and what's happening out there. So I really get inspired by analog media. I love it.
Anri Mc Hugh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
My biggest takeaway from my chat with Anri was the way that they've maintained an enduring brand platform for over 23 years, but they've reimagined it per geographical context and per channel in a way that doesn't feel samey. When you look at all their creative across different channels, it's all different jigsaw pieces that work really well when they come together. I think that's what keeps it fresh, even though it's the same idea.